Okay, so this is our first question. Of course, it's the spot the error. Let's look at it. Emotional abuse or maltreatment, also known as psychological abuse, is the most common form of child abuse, often experienced by children witnessing domestic violence, mostly accompanied by physical and sexual abuse. Do you think there is an error? The same sentence is, of course, distributed into 4 parts. Do you think there is an error, or it's fine as it is? Most of you are coming back and saying no error, no error, no error. Okay, so I have part 1, part 5 and part 3. Most of you have come back and said you don't think there's any error in it. Let's quickly look at the context, okay? So emotional abuse or maltreatment, also known as psychological abuse, is the most common form of child abuse. So in terms of subject-verb agreement, right? We're talking about singular subject, so singular verb, absolutely fine. Often experienced by children, okay, the preposition is also fine. Children witnessing domestic violence, mostly accompanied by, so for me, this last part, right, what is that is mostly accompanied by? So what do you think is wrong with the last part? Even I'm agreeing to that. There's something wrong with part 4. Can somebody tell me what is wrong with part 4? Not abusement. Abuse itself is noun form only, right? Okay, so let's look at the context. Most of you have come back and said usually, mostly, in mostly, with, not, by, through. So basically what we're saying is, in order to highlight that we are referring to domestic violence, and that is what is accompanied by physical and sexual abuse, I need a connector, right? I need some sort of a connector here to make the sentence structurally and grammatically correct. So what mostly here, what meaning does it bring? It says it brings in the meaning of usually domestic violence is accompanied by physical and sexual abuse. That's what they're saying. So as a word choice, this is fine as it is. But what I need to include is either and, right? By children witnessing domestic violence and mostly accompanied by physical and sexual abuse, or I could even say which is the domestic violence which is mostly accompanied by physical and sexual abuse. I need some sort of a connector. So because for me, mostly accompanied is hanging loose without giving me a direct reference, and I need some sort of a connector to bring in that emphasis saying we are referring to domestic violence here. So emotional abuse or maltreatment, also known as psychological abuse, is the most common form of child abuse, often experienced by children witnessing domestic violence and mostly accompanied, or which is mostly accompanied by physical and sexual abuse. But my only other problem with this is I could have this error either in part 3 or part 4, right? I can say I can add that and which is after violence, or I can add it before mostly. So my problem is, which part do I put it in? Should I use 3 or 4? Right? Now that's my second dilemma. So I would say, you know, in terms of which part to do, I would actually skip this question because I don't know where to put the connector. Should I put it in part 3 or should I put it in part 4? That's where my problem is. Are you following? So I would skip this question basically, but in order for me to use the context correctly. Are you following, guys? You don't have to be confused. Most of these questions sometimes put us in a fix where, because you know, we don't know which part should we look at. Don't ignore errors of punctuation. So that's the only concern that I have. That's why, because it's confusing, I would skip it. I can either put it in 3 or I can put it in 4. So just for the benefit of everybody else, what we're basically saying is, let me put this down, okay? I'm going to write this down so it makes more sense for you guys. So the whole part, I'm writing the whole sentence here. Emotional abuse or maltreatment, also known as psychological abuse, is the most common form of child abuse, often experienced by children witnessing domestic violence. So I can say and is mostly accompanied by physical and sexual abuse, right? Yeah, I would remove the comma, of course, when I'm putting and, right? So this is the corrected sentence. But what I'm saying is, because this and, I can put it after violence in part 3 or I can put before mostly in part 4, right? It could either be part 3 or part 4. Or I can vehemently come back and say, right, because comma is there, like most of you are saying, if you want to pay attention to that, then I will say which is mostly accompanied by physical and sexual abuse, and I could say part 4 as well. Error is in part 4. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, there are two ways in which we can look at this question. One is, if you get rid of the comma and you put and, this is also one way in which you can write the sentence. But because of the comma in part 3, you can say which is mostly and say the error is in part 4. Next one, both the wolves were internationalists and pacifists who believed that promoting understanding between people was the best way to avoid another world war and choose quite consciously to publish works by foreign authors that the British reading public were unaware of. Where do you think the error is? So, in fact, I have all the options. Most of you are saying A, B, C, all three. Let's look at it. Both the wolves were internationalists and pacifists who believed that promoting understanding between people was the best way to avoid another world war and choose quite consciously to publish works by foreign authors that the British reading public were unaware of. So we're talking about more than one subject. So singular subject verb agreement is fine. What do they believe? So I have only one question, okay? What is the general tense in the context? This is my question, somebody answer it. What is the general tense in the context? Is it present tense, past tense, future tense? Nobody's answered my question. Simple past. Now, if most of you are coming back and saying past tense, can you look at all the action words in the context and see if it is in line with the past context? What is helping you decide that it was past tense? Where, was, where. Is there any other verb, the action word, which is not in line with the past tense? So we've established that past tense is the general tense in the context, right? What is the word that is not in line? There is a word in the context that is not in line with this tense. What word is that? Obviously, you will only search for the action words in the context. What word is that? Yeah. Can you identify? Yes, Ashish, thank you. Right? Choose. Which option that is in? C. Right? Choose is not in the past tense. Choose is present tense, right? Choose, present tense. Chose, past tense. Chosen, past participle. So what should I change here? Verb 1, verb 2, verb 3. What do I need to change here? That's it. I need to change choose to chose. That's the action word, right? In line with the past tense. So the error is in part C. I change choose to chose. So, okay, that's where the error is. Are you following? For those of you who don't know who pacifists are, they are peacemakers, peace lovers. So I don't know how many of you said part C. So this is an error pertaining to tense. Yeah, the works were published by foreign authors is fine. The preposition here is correct in part C. Both the wolves were international pacifists who believe that promoting understanding between people was the best way to avoid. So I'm guessing here, I understand there's always a confusion between and among, but depending on the contexts, right? You could also say, I'm guessing here they are referring to the people of belonging to these two categories. If we look up a little bit in terms of among and between, if you're being very specific between two groups that have been discussed in the context, you can still use between. So it's very subjective here. The very obvious error is in part C. Part B, what you guys are saying between people is very subjective. Okay? The appointment of a special counsel converts an immediate and explosive threat to his presidency into a quiet, slow-burning conflagration that could put direct uncomfortable heat on him and undermine his ability to govern for years to come. Yeah? What do you think? Okay, those who said A, tell me why you think A is the error. A has the error. Okay? So I'm assuming a lot of you might come back and say this, maybe you'll have to change it to council. But counsel also predominantly is a verb, yes, but it can also act as a noun, right? As a noun, it brings us the meaning of somebody giving, like a person giving advice, right? A person giving legal advice. So, counsel, yes, it's a verb, but it can also act as a noun. So that's fine. The appointment of a special counsel converts an immediate and explosive threat to The appointment, singular subject. So converts, singular verb is fine. An immediate and explosive threat to who? His presidency, into what? A quiet, slow-burning conflagration that could put direct, uncomfortable heat on him. And undermine. So there's an idiom here. To put heat on somebody means what? Can somebody tell me what this means in the context? Explosive here is an adjective, right? Describing the threat. Immediate and explosive are adjectives describing the threat. Those of you who are saying change into to by, we are talking about convert is a verb, right? You convert something into something else, right? In terms of collocation, it cannot be convert by. So into as a preposition also is fine. Put heat on someone means, yeah, put pressure, correct. So heat on him. And undermine. Undermine means, what is the meaning of undermine here? To weaken gradually or insidiously, right? For those of you who don't know the meaning of this, which means what? You're trying to basically trap this person. You're working harmfully in a subtle manner. So if you look at the context as such, there doesn't seem to be any error for me. The appointment of a special counsel, so the counsel is, it could refer to a person or a group of people giving legal advice, converts an immediate and explosive threat to his presidency into a quiet, slow-burning conflagration that could put direct, uncomfortable heat on him and undermine his ability to govern for years to come. No error. The sentence as such is correct. So one way to do this is to quickly dissect the context and move on. Could as such is fine as it is, right? Because it just says there's a possibility of this happening. When the counsel converts this immediate and explosive threat to his presidency into a quiet, slow-burning conflagration, the possibility is that he will feel the pressure. And what they are trying to accomplish here is to undermine his ability to govern for the years to come in the future. A person or a group of people have been appointed, right, to give legal advice where they are trying to convert some sort of a immediate and explosive threat to who's ever presidency, I don't know who this person is, right, into a quiet, slow burning conflagration. So something that is immediate and explosive, they are dragging it out, right? It's becoming, adding pressure constantly, slowly, in a continuous manner where this person feels the pressure. And because he's feeling the pressure, the president is unable to function in a manner that is appropriate and might lose his ability to govern in the future. That's what the context meaning is. Conflagration means something to do with, basically conflagration is a large destructive fire. In this context, we're talking about something that will be very destructive to his presidency. Yeah, no error.